Mr. Vic Verdier, thanks so much for coming on the Wolf and Iron podcast. Great to have you here, man.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be in this podcast. I've been listening to a Wolf and Iron podcast for quite a few years now, and I really enjoy it.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. And I think I first got introduced to you sometime last year, I think, and then just kind of connected, just liked some of the posts that you've done on Instagram, and just kind of started following along with some of the things that you're talking about in terms of men's strength and health. And you've just got a very interesting background, and we'll talk some about that. And then you joined the Foundry, which is great to have you over there. So I appreciate you being a part of that. I want you to tell us a little bit about your background. And if I think you're being too humble, I'm going to read this section off of another website that talks about it, because you've got a really interesting background. You're kind of like like the James Bond of how men would want to live. There's a lot of those aspects. So just give us your background. You're French, so we'll probably pick up on that.
Yeah, I grew up in Paris, so 47, almost 48 years ago. Yeah. And I spent quite a few years in the Navy, the French Navy, traveling, but also training people, training officers of foreign armies. So I did that for quite a while, and that was very interesting because I was teaching anything from firearm to skydiving to hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that. So very interesting time. At the end of my time in the Navy, I switched to scuba diving. Okay, so recreational scuba diving at the beginning, and I did that for almost 25 years. And I was specialized in cave diving and really deep diving. So I wrote some books and I did some fun stuff. I was traveling a lot and usually in tropical countries. So that's a pretty cool time, cool chapter in my life. I ended up in Thailand and I fell in love with Thai boxing. So I did that for a while, for 6 years in Thailand, teaching Thai boxing after a while. A lot of fun too. Very nice country, a lot of great people over there. And I really enjoy Thai boxing, Muay Thai. And then roughly 12 years ago, I met another French guy, Erwan Lecor, who started something called MoveNat. MoveNat stands for moving naturally or moving in nature.
Yeah.
And we started to do some retreats in Thailand and then pretty much all over the world. And we started a certification, and now we have several thousand people who are certified as MoveNat trainers. So it's interesting to see how the company, but also how the idea grew up. And now you have, MoveNat is pretty well known in the fitness industry. It's not really fitness; it's fitness, movement, lifestyle. It's a lot of different things that I really enjoy, and I've been doing that for, as I say, 12 years. What else? With my partner, I own a gym in Seattle, where we are specialized in MoveNat, obviously, but also kettlebells and powerlifting, barbell stuff, and it's been a very successful gym in Seattle. And I do some online coaching as well, especially for men over 40, because that's my case, obviously. And because I like to help those men to regain a lot of things that they lost somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
Because life is life.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as you're talking about your background and as I was researching you a little bit, so much, even since the early days, so much of your career has been focused around teaching people. I mean, really just helping and teaching them, something that you were particularly interested in or gifted in at that time. And then as a season of life changed, your interests changed, but you still took on more of that teaching role. Is that something that, when did you kind of see that that was a natural part of your personality, or how early were you drawn to that?
Uh, that's probably in the Navy that I really started to teach stuff, uh, and I really enjoy that. And I think that when you have a job, it should be a job. It should be also something you're really passionate about, something you really enjoy. Otherwise, it's just a half-ass job. I don't know. Can I swear on this
Yeah,
podcast or
yeah,
not?
yeah, whatever. Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
good. I'm French, so it's easy for me to swear. So yeah, teaching has always been something I really enjoyed, and therefore I keep doing that. As you said, different topics, different things. I teach a lot of combatives and self defense. I teach a lot of stuff in the water, the aquatics. I teach movement. I teach strength and conditioning, and I hope somehow I also teach or help people to be a tiny bit more manly and a tiny bit more in tune with what they used to be 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think so. And and I say this as a total compliment. I think a lot of men would look at you and say, "Wow, when I get to be, how old are you now? 50,
58, almost
50,
58 in a few days.
yeah, okay, 58. Happy birthday and early birthday. When I get to be 58, I want to be in shape like this guy. I want to do things that I'm passionate about, like what Vic's doing. I'd love to have had some kind of life experience that I could, when I show up at a party and they say, "Well, what did you do when you were in your 30s or 40?" There's a lot of guys that's inspirational, man. And I think that just you sharing your story and saying, "This is how one guy has lived his life," I think is really good, and I think it inspires a lot of guys that hear that. So without a doubt,
Oh, thank you. Appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah, for sure.
I don't do it to inspire anyone. I did it because it was my life and because I enjoyed doing it. Uh, if it can inspire someone, great. Uh, I came up with a lot of principles and values over the years, and that's what I try to share most of the time on social media, especially in Instagram. I tend to be kind of active on Instagram, and I try to share some of the principles and some of the values that I believe are more important for men today
Yeah.
than it used to be maybe 50 or 100 years ago, because that was kind of normal at that time. And it seemed like it's not normal anymore. So I try to share that as much as I can.
And kind of leaning on that, I wanted to ask, since you've traveled, more extensively than most, more than me, more than most of our listeners, I would imagine, and you've spent a good bit of time in these countries, um, is what we're seeing you know, with men that are in their 40s and 50s and so on, that kind of degradation of the kind of that downhill slope of just kind of getting ready to die, over the years, getting fat, getting lazy, getting out of shape, all those things, getting slow in just about every way. Is that a particularly like American issue? Is it how does that differ like between like maybe Europe versus Thailand versus America versus some other, places, England and so forth?
I think there's some noticeable differences between countries and cultures. It can be because of their culture, it can be because of religion, it can be because of lifestyle and level of wealth and comfort, I
Yeah.
would say. Um, so yeah, there's some clear differences between countries, or at least kind of cultures. I would put Europe as a culture more than different countries, because even if some of your listeners might argue with that, there's not so many differences between a man in France, a man in Switzerland, or a man in Belgium, or Um, I would say, yeah, I notice in the US, pretty much every man I can see around who is over maybe 35 start to put some a bit of weight
Yeah.
on the waistline, start to get more comfortable and less interested in challenging himself. Uh, Things that I might not necessarily see in Asia, in some countries in Asia or in Africa. I was really surprised in Africa to see everybody being really, really active, really maybe not fit all the time, but kind of fit,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. Uh, it's not like everybody is an athlete. It's far from that. Uh, and sometimes being kind of fat in some countries is a sign of wealth.
Mm.
Okay? However, because people are less sedentary, people spend less time sitting, they tend to be more mobile, more active, and in slightly better shape, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And it seems to follow just as you said, ease and comfort. That's and you know we can say wealth or just that lifestyle that a lot of people are blessed to have in Western cultures or wherever it happens to be. That seems to lead into this um, softening of manhood, just you know from an early age. And so we get softer, we get more less mobile. We stop challenging ourselves. I'll kind of give you a quick example. This is years ago. I was at a kind of like a little school fair.
Mhm.
It was you could you know the students had a little table set up. They could you know sell something or whatever. They had parents coming around at the school. Well, I had built a I don't know what they're called, but it's basically like one of those strongmen things where you hit it with a hammer and then the bell
Yeah,
goes ding to the top, right? This thing
yeah,
was
yeah.
awesome. Like this was made. I used a design from like the 1950s and built this
Wow.
thing right for this, and it was a lot of fun. And I would see parents come to it, and it's almost like these dads were embarrassed to even try it. Like they would let their kids do it, but they didn't want to try it themselves. And very few parents would just kind of just do something out of the norm, even something
Yeah,
small like that, because they were so insulated into their little safety bubble of what's comfortable and I don't want to wrinkle my shirt or I don't want to look, you know, whatever.
yeah.
That's just something that I felt bad for those guys.
And I think it's not only not being in shape and being a bit ashamed about that. I think it's also the image, the perception of
Yeah.
other people, and I see that a lot with movement. As I say, I teach movement quite a lot, and we do a lot of movement on the ground, and it can be indoors in the gym. Okay, fine. People are comfortable with that to a certain extent, but it can also be teaching movement on the ground, outside in the park, and that's where people get uncomfortable because it's outside the norm.
Yeah.
It's not. It's something that kids do, but adults don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not serious enough. And I think it's important for men to give themselves permission to move, to give themselves permission to look a bit stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that because every time you start something new, something you don't know, you're always a bit stupid.
Yeah.
Whatever the movement you do, whatever the activity you do, the sport you do, the first time you do it, you don't know anything. You don't know how to do it. You're uncoordinated. You're not really fast. You're not really good at it. Okay. So you look stupid. But if you refrain yourself from doing anything that you're not comfortable with, you never challenge you never expand your comfort zone. And that's sad somehow.
Yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
that's that slow you're taking that slow path to death, you know, you're starting it
Yeah.
out. And so this kind of gets a little bit into mindset because a lot of
Yeah.
the guys that I talk to, they'll hit 30 or they'll hit 40 and it's a joke that they'll say and they'll say, "Well, it's all downhill from here." Or you know, they'll get into their 40s and they start having back problems and they're like, "Oh, it's, you
Yeah.
know, this is what happens when you hit 40 or this is what happens when you hit 50." And they almost say it with a sense of like pride that they're getting old and that they're dying, you know, but they don't realize that they're dudes out like they're guys like yourself. They're men that are well into their 60s that are experiencing what they feel like is the prime of their life because they finally started to do the right things for their health. And you know, what's the right mindset? How would you say this to a guy? If a guy comes up to you and says, "Well, you look pretty good for 58, but man, I just ever since I hit 40, I just can't anymore."
I think age is just a number. Okay, I mean maybe it's a it's a cliche to say that, but yeah, there's some things that your body is you can see in your body that you lived before. Okay, you had some injuries, maybe you had some surgeries, some illnesses or anything. So your body obviously has to deal with that. But in general, there shouldn't be such a decline in your health, such a decline in your fitness over the years. Uh, there's stuff I don't do anymore, and it's not because I cannot do them. It's just because I'm not interested in them anymore. But I can do now things that I was not able to do in my 20s.
Hmm.
And it's not because I'm stronger or anything like that. It's just because I try to challenge myself and learn new things all the time. And therefore, yeah, I know more stuff than I knew when I was 20.
Yeah.
And I'm able to do, in general, more stuff than I was able to do when I was 20. And that's fine. And I think it's not, I'm not a freak of nature or anything like that. I think everybody, every man out there should be able to do the same.
Yeah. Are there things that if you could go back to when you're in your 30s or maybe even in your 40s that you would have wanted to do or change? Like a lot of guys right now, like my age, in their 40s or even a little bit earlier, they're just lifting heavy. They're just pushing around a lot of weight and trying to lift as much as they can and get really strong. And what I've seen is that these guys get to be 50, 60, and their joints are just a wreck. Their shoulders hurt, their knees hurt, everything hurts, and all the muscle is gone, and now they're just kind of stuck stiff, you know. Um, and I think I know the answer to this, but if you could have changed something back when you were 30 or 40, is there something that you would recommend those guys do at that age to be prepared for when they get to be in their 50s?
When someone wants to be fit, in general, they either do cardio or resistance training,
Yeah.
strength training. Okay, and there's not so many other options in their mind. They don't want to do any kind of stretching. Stretching is yoga, and that's not a very manly thing for some reason. I don't know why, because yoga can be really, really hard
Yeah.
and really challenging. Um, I would say in my 30s, I should have done a lot more mobility than I did. Okay, in my 30s, I was diving a lot, and in cave diving, you end up with a lot of tanks, a lot of equipment that you carry down shitty stairs into a cave and stuff like that. And I mean, you're carrying a lot of weight. Okay, so I was really into weight training. Yes, sure about that. However, mobility would have helped me a lot more, and I think I didn't do enough of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mobility is probably one of the things people should work on. The other thing I would say is explosiveness.
Explosiveness. Yeah.
Explosiveness meaning speed, power, all those kind of things, because everything we do when it comes to strength training or resistance training is kind of slow. It's not power production at all.
Yeah.
And that's something that most people need. Being able to sprint, being able to lift something heavy quickly, like in Olympic lifting, being
Yeah.
able to jump, are those kind of things that not so many people practice on a regular basis.
Well, and I know a lot of my friends that have, these are guys that you would look at and say that guy's really fit, he's really
Mm-hmm.
strong, but they'll throw their back out, doing something a movement too quick, not exercise, but just a movement. You know, like they reach down to
Yeah,
get their kid's toy off the floor, and they
yeah,
stand up and they're like, "Oh no," you know.
yeah, yeah,
And it
yeah.
shouldn't be that way. And a lot of it is that, you know, a lot of the training that guys do, it's really not practical training. Like there's,
Mhm.
you know, like I like to bench press, and not that you could tell, but I like to bench press, but like a lot of guys do. But there's not a whole lot of times in my life where I'm really going to be in a situation where I'm trying to push off 200 pounds, you know, away from me. But there's going to be a lot more situations where I need to get up and sprint out of the way
Yeah.
or move. So tell us a little bit about like some of the MoveNet stuff. Like if somebody was to go one of these MoveNet trainings, what kind of things, what kind of movements are happening there that that are like the more natural things that you would need to do in your life?
So MoveNat is based on a lot of different, I would say, families of movements. Things like things simple like walking or running. Okay, things we don't practice enough like crawling, jumping, climbing, balancing, and things that have, I would say, less immediate practical application, like all the combatives, all the swimming part, the aquatic part that people don't practice very often unless it's their sport.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so movement is a lot of different things, and we all tend to be very specialized in general. In the modern world, everybody wants to be different, and the best way to be different is to be highly specialized because you can be really good at something.
yeah,
And the more specialized, the easier it is to be really good at something. Okay, but the MoveNat approach of training in general is more about being a generalist and being able to do pretty well in a lot of different movements you do every day, but also movements you don't do on a very frequent basis.
yeah. And when I was watching some of the videos on the MoveNet site, there's some videos out there of you, by the way, and you look like a guy who just like you live on the island all day and you just go kill animals and collect coconuts. It was awesome. I was like, but the movements that you guys were doing, it was like a cross between some of the stuff that you might see the SEAL teams do, and a lot of play like that kids would do. And it was the stuff that was just like, let's climb a tree, let's go walk across this weird terrain, let's go for a bit of a run, let's lift these rocks, you know, let's do the stuff. But like that's the stuff that you would like if you're working on a farm or if you were you know, were actually a fit person. That's the kind of mobility that I think people really miss, especially as they get into their 40s and 50s, and we're sitting down in chairs all day and we're, you know, not moving. It's that kind of the ability to kind of play and to have fun, to, you know, to be able to get out there, throw a football around or kick a soccer ball, and, you know, not worry about I'm going to throw something out or I'm going to, if I fall down, it's all over. You know, that kind of stuff. That's what guys really, that's what they want, especially as they get older. They want that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's important to keep moving, uh, even if in your older age. And I have some of my clients are in their 70s, you know,
Yeah.
uh, and because they spend hours and hours every day sitting, like I'm doing right now, you too.
Yeah.
It's difficult for them or for their body to move as well as they used to move.
Yeah.
Uh, the way we used to move as a species, on a very evolutionary standpoint, as hunter-gatherer, we were running, we were carrying dead meat, we were jumping over streams, we were active.
Yeah.
Okay, we were not spending our days sitting on a chair. And if we were sitting on the ground. So being able to stand up, going on the ground, being able to squat deep.
Yeah.
Okay, things that many people have a hard time doing nowadays, unless you live in some Asian countries like Thailand or Japan, where people squat a
Yeah.
lot more than we do in the Western world.
Yeah. We never squat.
We don't squat.
When was the last
There's
time
no,
anybody saw an American just, you know, squatting in the middle of a, you know, they'll look around for a chair and if they don't see one, they just go, well, I guess I'm standing. You know,
yeah,
that's what we
exactly.
do.
And it's funny. I have some images in my head of my time in Thailand. People working on my motorcycle, mechanics spending 3 hours squatting near the engine and
Yeah.
not moving, not standing, saying, "Oh, my knees are killing me." No, no, no problem. No, no, because they squat all the time.
One of the when I was in boot camp, I was in the Navy. One of the punishments actually that we had to do was to squat. So like if somebody sometimes we would be in a classroom because you're in boot camp, you had to learn some stuff. So we'd be in a classroom and somebody would fall asleep and they would say, "Everybody get out of your chair and squat," and it was painful because it's just a bunch of Americans in there trying to do something we never do, and we're all just trying to squat and just hold that, and not move. And it's hard to imagine being able to do that for as a natural pose and sitting.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's great for your prostate. It's great for I've heard for your bowels and just general hip mobility. So many other things.
And I was surprised when I was in Japan or even in China, where you don't have the kind of Western toilets you find in the Western world where you sit.
Yeah.
No, it's a hole in the ground. It could be a fancy hole in the ground with a lot of jets and stuff. But it's a hole in the ground and you have to squat, and you cannot say when you're 70, you cannot say, "I know, I stopped now." No, you have to
You got to.
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the more you do it, the better you get at it.
That's
And
good.
we're losing those movements, and I think that's sad. So to come back to your initial question, if there's something that any man out there should do, it's squatting.
Yeah.
Okay, it's moving, it's going on the ground, it's crawling a bit, it's doing some stuff that we don't do on a
Yeah.
daily basis. It's challenging our movement pattern in general.
Okay, I've got a challenge for every man listening to this podcast over 30. Your goal by the end of this year, end of 2022, is to be able to get off the ground without going, ugh. If you can do it without making the sound, then I think you've accomplished something. That's at least a step in the right direction. Because we just, there's always that sound that the guys make. It's like that's what dads do. So just try to do that and work on
There
squat.
was a study, I think it's out of Brazil, and it's kind of a famous study. It's been cited many times, and it was let's say a correlation between your ability to get up from the ground and your life expectancy.
Oh, I remember this. I remember hearing about this. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't use your hands at all to get up from the ground, your life expectancy is a lot longer than if you have to use your hands to get up.
Yeah.
So it's maybe another challenge for the listeners.
No, I had a lot of friends come to me. I remember when that came out, because a lot of my friends who are older came to me and said, "Dude, I don't have much longer to live," because they couldn't do it. They were just like, I can't do it. So no, that's good. So let's talk about testosterone a little bit, because this is an issue not only in men that are in their 50s, which that's kind of, I don't want to say always been an issue. That's been an issue for a while. Guys that are 50 or above, testosterone starts to lower in them. This is becoming an issue with guys that are in their 20s. And especially in their 30s and 40s, and then very significant issues as they get into their 50s. I've actually seen a number of men that were in their, I would imagine, 60s, that I had a hard time determining if they were a male or a female, because their body had just taken on so much estrogen, and they had just physically changed so much. But this is something this isn't like a disease that you have that you can't fix or something like that. Testosterone is something that every man has, unless he has a biological disorder. The vast majority of men have control over this. So talk a little bit about some of the things that boost testosterone, or that are just really practical things that every guy should be doing.
For most of the time, it's a lifestyle issue. Okay, there's plenty of things that can impact your testosterone level. And that's true. You see a lot of statistics and studies showing that young men nowadays have the same testosterone level than older men 50 years ago. And I don't know if it's true. I don't know how realistic they are. But the thing is, the lifestyle we have now doesn't really promote a high testosterone level in the later years of our life.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is there's plenty of things we can do. First of all, being as active as possible, resistance training, weightlifting, stuff like that. We know
Yeah.
that it will boost your testosterone level. Okay, so that's the obvious one.
Yeah.
And then you have all the others, things like sleep,
Mm.
how well you sleep, how long you sleep, and so on. Because testosterone is what we need to repair and rebuild our body when we train.
Yeah.
And when do we repair and rebuild the body? When we sleep, in the deep sleep phase of your night.
Yeah.
That's when you actually repair the stuff you broke during your training. So if you train hard but you don't sleep properly, you don't get all the benefits of your training.
Yeah. And you don't get that
Uh,
deep sleep. That's the important thing too, is
yes,
to really get,
yes,
yeah, not just you can make it through the night and you feel like you got 8 hours, but really hitting that deep REM sleep. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You have different phases in your sleep. You have the non-REM. REM is rapid eye movement. That's
Uh-huh.
when you're dreaming. And it's during the non-REM phase of your sleep that you actually rebuild your body. You have different phases in
Okay.
this non-REM phase. You have 3 or 4 phases depending on the school of thought you see out there. So sleep is important. Diet is important as well, because depending on what you eat, you can promote or not testosterone production. Okay, so your diet is important. What you drink is important as well. We know that the more alcohol you ingest and the more aromatization you end up with because of fat tissue, adipose tissue that you pile up. What else? What else? Your stress level is also very important.
Yeah.
Okay, and being able to get a good stress management strategy in your life is probably one of the best things you can do to live a long and healthy life.
Yeah, for sure.
Because as soon as you're stressed, and I'm talking about chronic stress, I'm not talking about the short burst of intensive stress like an adrenaline rush when you're driving and all of a sudden there's a kid crossing the street and okay, that
Yeah.
you have a short burst of stress and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's actually very healthy. I'm talking about the chronic stress with I mean, getting stuck in traffic, having an ongoing argument with your partner, things like that.
Yeah.
Those are the things that can be detrimental to your testosterone level as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And guys who are listening to this, these are all things that are within our control and things that we can change. And I definitely recommend every guy out there go get a testosterone checkup.
Yeah,
Get a
that's
test to see where
yeah.
you're at, and make it a goal to increase those numbers, and get them in a healthy range,
Mhm.
because you can do that. And the cool thing is it's something that can be measured, so you can basically see where you're at month 1 and where you're at month 6, where you're at month 12 as you begin to make changes in your life and move that needle. So when we talk about for guys that are in their 50s, there are a couple of things that we've talked about. I kind of want to touch on a little bit more. Explosiveness being one of those, because I'm
Mhm.
thinking the guys that are getting up there in age, they really don't feel like they have the ability to just move at a moment's notice. When we talk about what are some exercises that these guys can be doing that are going to train them in those sort of explosive movements?
Okay. Uh, what I would say first, because there's always
Yeah.
warning kind of thing, is if you haven't been moving for the last 30 years, don't start sprinting right away.
Right. Right.
Okay. Uh, if you haven't done any kind of resistance training for the last 30 years, don't go and do a clean and jerk or a snatch with a barbell.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, everything has to be progressive, and obviously the older you wait or the longer you wait to start working on your explosiveness and power production, the more progressive you have to be.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, that being said, what kind of movement can you do? I would say sprinting uphill
Okay. Uphill.
is
Okay.
probably the easiest one you can do, because you can really adapt your speed, and also you will. It will be difficult to get overboard with that,
Right.
especially when you go uphill.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. It limits your speed. Yeah.
it limits your speed quite a bit.
And if you
Okay,
fall, you don't have to fall quite as far. At least it doesn't feel like it. So,
that's a good point.
yeah.
Jumping. Jumping can be really taxing for your joints. So anyone who has kind of excess weight, it's probably not the first thing you should do.
Yeah.
Okay, because obviously the heavier you are, the more impact you will have to absorb.
Yeah.
And it's absorbed by your joints and your whole body in general. So being careful with jumping. When it comes to lifting weight, there's some ballistic movements that are really, really good to build some explosiveness. And the simplest, even if it's not simple at all, but the simplest is probably the kettlebell swing.
Okay.
Because it works on your whole posterior chain. You can be very progressive with the weight you want to swing. It's not an extremely complex movement. It has some things you need to work on, and usually an instructor can help figure it out, because just watching a video on YouTube is usually not enough to really understand all the subtleties of the swing. But it's a really good tool for power production. And then you have a lot of other ballistic movements like kettlebell snatch, like barbell clean and jerk, all those things that will help you to build some explosiveness as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And some of the things that I think are that I've seen that have been really very practical, that I see them more in the firearms community, is a guy will pretend to be sitting at a table or sitting in his car, and it's, and he's got some targets out here, and he's basically trying to see practically how quickly can I get up from this position and run, over here and duck and get back up and shoot, or or get over behind these targets and those kinds of things. I think those kinds of, and that's pretty advanced stuff. But I would love to see a course that's really, even if there's no firearms involved, but it's basically like it's just a course that you've just got to sprint from this thing, duck down behind this obstacle, crawl over this piece, just something that was set up more than just a static kind of gym, but that really challenges us.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe we should build something like that. That'd be cool.
I mean, we try to do that to a certain extent. In MoveNat, we have what we call a combo. Combo
Okay.
is combination of different movements that you put back to back.
Yeah.
And then you have people who have to run and jump and climb and run again and crawl and stuff like that. So we do that in pretty much every workshop or every certification or every retreat we do. It's not tactical oriented.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's some
it's
aspects of it.
Yes.
Yeah, you can see how that could translate into very
Yeah.
practical stuff. Yeah. No, that's good. As we kind of wrap this up, I know you've got some things that you're doing now, some online coaching and some other stuff. Give us a second here. Just tell us about what you have happening now and how people can contact you.
Okay. So I have a small group, and I like to keep it small because it's more enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
I have a small group of students that I train once, twice, or several times a week, and are usually men over 45, 50, and so on. And we work on, I would say, 5 aspects of their life, and that could be their strength, because every man needs to be strong.
Yeah.
And it means a lot of different things. We work on their health. biomarkers like testosterone level, things like that. We work on their sharpness. What I mean by sharpness is how how fast and how easy it is for them to stay sharp in their head.
Yeah.
Okay, so the cognitive aspect of health. We work on their manliness, and manliness is a really vague term, but we actually have some very nice
Well,
nice opportunities of training.
so this is actually, that's interesting because, you know, when I think about having to coach men specifically in manliness, I would see
Mhm.
a lot of guys, especially that are older, um, would take offense to being told, "Hey, you need to be more manly. You know, you need to stand taller. You need to dress better. You need to, you know, take care of the, take care of yourself, whatever the case is."
Mhm.
Um, uh, you know, do guys give you pushback on that, or are they thankful, like they're ready for that feedback?
I think this, yeah, the first reaction is always, I'm manly enough. I'm a man, and it's normal. We have all some kind of pride,
Yeah,
and it's a normal reaction. And then when I start asking some very specific questions, then they realize that yeah, being manly or being a man is covers a lot of different aspects of life. I'm not sure. I see on your left behind you, I see a portrait, and I'm not sure if it's Theodore Roosevelt
yeah,
or not.
yes, Theodore Roosevelt.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay. And if you think about Theodore Roosevelt, he's a perfect example of manliness
yeah,
somehow, because even if in his older age, uh, he was still exploring, he was still boxing, he was still horse riding, he was
yeah,
still challenging himself and pushing himself to have a hard life, more strenuous life.
yeah,
And and I think that's what manliness means. It means challenging ourselves in every aspect of life, being physical, mental, intellectual, spiritual as well,
yeah,
uh, and not just living your life like it's always been there and it will always be there. That's not true.
yeah,
We all die at some point, and the more we can challenge ourselves, the more we live somehow in these few years between our birth and our death. I think it's our quest as men, something we have to do, uh, being able to live the life to its full extent somehow.
yeah. I think that's very well said. Very well said.
Thank
Um,
you.
so how can guys get in touch with you if they want to take a part in any of these courses or learn more about what you've got going on?
I have a website, vicverdiercoaching.com. As I say, I'm very active on Instagram,
Yeah,
Vic Verdier Coaching. Okay, easy, not very original.
yeah,
Uh, as I say, I'm teaching a lot of MoveNat workshops and certifications. So that's movenat.com, MOVNAT. And I own a gym in Seattle that is kettlebellity.com. So that's also very easy to find. We are one of the, if not the largest kettlebell gym in the Pacific Northwest,
yeah.
uh, and we train everybody.
Yeah, if you guys haven't taken part in a kettlebell workout, it will rock you. It will absolutely rock you because I mean it's just you're using so many of the just from the floor up muscles to do just about everything that you're doing, and it's a lot of fun too. So fast paced, and you get to move through a lot of different movements. Well, Vic, this has been great, man. Great conversation. I know we're gonna learn a lot more from you as we just as I kind of follow along with your life and what you got going on. And listen, guys, those of you who are listening to this or who are watching this, you got to get out of that mindset that that life is supposed to get easier as you move on, and that somehow we've won life if we get to age 65 and we can retire and never have to do anything again. That's not a manly way of thinking. You should be thinking, how do I become more capable, more athletic, more of the man that I'm supposed to be as I move through life? and instead of the, the opposite of that. And so hopefully you guys got a little bit of inspiration here from Vic. And look, man, I appreciate you once again for coming on here, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you a lot.